The Lions of Al-Rassan by Gavriel. So first of all, can we just admire this beauty? Like, how stunning is that? Is that just not absolutely pretty? Um, I love classic fantasy covers so much. I think current day fantasy covers are really nice. Like, I think if you were to walk into a bookstore, 9 times out of 10, everything there will be beautiful. But there was a time, like 6, 7 years ago, where it would be much more wishy washy. Like, I remember being so flabbergasted at how just ugly some covers would be. And this one, so I read this on ebook, but after I finished it, I was like, I need to get a physical copy, of course. Uh, but I hate the, well, I don't hate the current cover, but it's boring. Like, that's the thing with a lot of newer covers, they're just boring. Whereas, like, even if you don't like this, which I could understand, it's at least something. It's art. Like, someone's drawn this. It's stunning. Um, Whereas nowadays, like, a lot of covers, they're just like uninspired. That's the thing. It's uninspired. This clearly, there was thought put into this, and that's why I will always be, I'll always cheer for the classic fantasy covers. Anyways, this book is set in a fictional version of Spain. I would say, it's called Esperania, like Espana, and we follow these three main characters primarily, although there are others, and each of them kind of represent the three main religions that are in this world. So we have Jehane, who is part of the Kindath faith. We have Rodrigo, who is part of the Jadeite faith, and we have Chiron, or Chiron, who is part of the Asherites. And the Asherites are the ones that are currently in power. They like rule Al-Rassan. And these three religions kind of correlate with three religions we have in our world. So Islam, Christianity, and Judaism. And it's pretty obvious, like, from the prologue, like, which one of them is. But the other two, I could not. Like, I spent like the first quarter to like half the book, like, figuring out which one was which. And I think that was part of the fun for me, though. However, it's really obvious, like, looking back, which one was which. But yeah, so the the Kindath, Jane, who's Kindath, she's my favorite character in the book. Actually, I don't think that's her. I think that's her there. I might be wrong, but she's just so. Oh, Jane's just so precious. She's a doctor, and she's so um her will is so strong. Like, she'll go after what she needs to. She doesn't care what other people think. However, she does care. She cares so much for everyone in the book. And there was like this one moment when everyone like cared for her, and I was just so happy because I was like, she is really the glue that keeps everything together, right? And um so the Kindath are kind of oppressed a lot by the Jadites who live in the north, and they do not like the Kindath at all. They compare them to animals, and they're just like, they just do not like them. However, the Asherites let the Kindath stay in Al-Rassan. However, they like highly tax them, and clearly they're still oppressed, but they're allowed to form communities and have their own place to stay at least. The Ashrites, speaking of them, they also have this extremist group that reside in the south, and they were some of the most interesting parts for me to read about, just because I think um, Gavriel does such a good job with characters. You really feel like you get into these people's minds, and so when we follow these extremists, I think his name is one of them is. Let me see if I can. I'm not sure. I can't find it here, but I think Tarif is his name. Him and like his brother or whatever. their their POVs are rough. They're like nuts. Those people are crazy, but they also made me laugh a lot because the way that they would think about the characters in the main continent was so hilarious. Like they also look down upon them. They think they're just the Asherites, the ones from their religion. They think they're just Asherites in name only. Like all of the ideals that their religion teaches, they don't actually care about. Which is true because the Al-Rassan kind of has become a more liberal state. It's become more free and open, and they drink and all this, and it's really fun. But and so the ones, the Muwardis, that's the name of the extremists. They call them like womanish and womanly, and it's so funny. I mean, they do something horrible in that name, so I shouldn't laugh at it. But they're not real, so I can laugh at it. It's funny stuff they say because it's so ridiculous. It's like, are you are nuts. So yeah, they're part of the story as well, and we have this plot that's kind of leading that. How do I explain it? So we have the holy war between two of the religions. However, we mainly focus on. Sorry, I don't know why I'm so edgy. We mainly focus on these three characters and the bonds that they form with each other, and it's just so good. Like you, each one kind of has a separate kind of relationship with the other, like all the three of them, and even like Rodrigo and Jihane, who are kind of have less of a bond than the main ones. They even they have such epic moments for me. Like their final scene together, like made me cry. Like I was like, it just didn't add much to the story. Like it would have been a totally fine story if he didn't have that scene, but the it speaks to the amazingness of Kay's writing that he did add that scene because it's exactly what I needed. And I'm trying to be so vague. Sorry, I'm like not making any sense. I'm trying to be vague because I don't want to spoil anything. But that moment, and then also earlier on in the book, where there's like this carnival bit, and Jahane is standing outside a certain door, and it's like deciding whether or not to go in, and it was so good. But I also really love Kyron. He is a poet, and he has so many amazing, pretty lines that just they just speak to you. You're like, oh, Kyron, even though he's like also like he's not morally like perfect. Like he does something like crazy in the first chapter that kind of sets up the whole book, and that also, can I just say, that opening scene was fabulous. And I've been told that I've watched videos on it, videos on this author, and someone said that he kind of has a really explosive opening in almost all of his books, so that makes me really excited. I'm reading Songs for Arborn next because I was in Joanna Reed's Discord, and she said a Discord that she shared with like a bunch of other people. Fireside is called, and she said that I should read Song for Airborne because I asked, like I was like, oh, I read this book, it was so good, and so yeah, so I'm gonna read that next. But yeah, I feel like there's more that I had to say. Sorry, I have like notes over here because, as you can tell, this is my first video, so I'm rambling a lot as I usually do. I'm trying to be concise, but it's hard. I will say parts 3 and 4 are ones that a lot of people don't tend to like, but I loved it. That was my favorite part. I think there were so many different characters. Like I would say, like every character kind of had. Oh, sorry, excuse me. Um, Besides the three characters, like a lot of the side characters that we follow in this book, they had huge moments in those two sections, and I felt like I don't know. I just really liked it. So obviously I can't go into it without spoilers. But I just wanted to mention that I kind of have an unpopular opinion that I actually love those parts, and part four in particular, and the whole carnival section was my favorite part in the book. I loved it. I also think that although I like the final chapter, chapter 18, I don't love it as much as other people do. I like the scene, the scene that makes this book. Of course, I love that scene. It's amazing. The silhouette, oh, everything. But I actually would have been happy if it ended on chapter 17, which I know is strange. If you've read the book, if you go back and look through, you'll be like, really? But I feel like the characters' stories fully wrap up by that point, that if they just left them at that point, I would have been totally fine not knowing what actually happened in the plot, which to me shows how good this book is, that like I don't even care like what ended up happening with what was set up with the religion and the holy wars, because I was already so satisfied with the endings that these characters got. The epilogue was cute. It was like Clockwork Princess epilogue. It gave me that same feeling that I did when I read that book, like when I was like 14. But it was good. The epilogue was nice. What else? I feel like I'm missing something major. Let me think. I think that's about it. The part that took me out, the one con that I would say, although I love the writing, he does tend to kind of flip about, with his tense. Like there was this one scene where he fully just switches to present tense, and it just, more than anything, it just confused me. I was like, what? Am I like reading this wrong? Like what is going on? And then I looked it up, and from what I've been told, he doesn't really conform to writing standards that people have, which I do love. I love that he kind of just does what he wants, and so he will switch between past and present and first person this and that, and so he does that at one point. But instead of aiding the scene and helping create the tension and the immediacy that I think he was intending, it had the opposite effect, and I felt like I was reading it so like, oh my god, and then, oh, okay, like, well, like it slowed it down for me instead of speeding it up. So that was kind of a negative. However, there was a moment later on when he does a similar thing, except he just goes really in the head of one of the characters, and that one really worked. It was Queen Ines, I think her name was, the Jadeite queen. Her like big moment in the book, her like scene, it really felt really palpable. Like I was like, oh my god, I feel this. And that's just another thing I keep mentioning, but it feels really real. Like all these characters feel like real life people. They feel like legends that you're reading about, and of course, I think some of them are based off of real people. I think did I mention at the start about the historical fiction feel of this? Like, it's set in a fake world like ours, but it almost feels like you're reading historical fiction, which I want recommendations. So I've really been feeling that of all the fantasy I've been reading. Like you can see my Robin Hobb shelf. She's what I would say she's probably my favorite author, and I still have the last three books left to read, the final trilogy. But I already know she's like, I love her so much, and her books actually those have a lot of magic. But I just mean, um, I like the historical feel of fantasy more than I do the magical element. However, I am reading Malzahn right now, and I am really enjoying it, and that is really magic heavy, so far at least. I'm only like, I think I'm like 30% of the way through the first book. But yeah, so I want to read more historical fiction type stuff as well. So if you have any recommendations, let me know. If you just have any recommendations in general, I'm always open. Like I said, this is a book that I picked up on a whim. Actually, I don't know if I said that, but I don't really pick up books just randomly. But this was just really calling to me, and I was like, let me try this out, and I'm so glad I did because I absolutely loved it, and I think I mentioned I'm going to read some for our bond next, and yeah, so let me know what you think of this book. Have you read it? Who's your favorite character? And yeah, what you're currently reading. I want to feel like I want to start a community here. I want to interact with more readers because I don't have none of my friends really read like that, and I've been wanting to start a YouTube channel for years, and so I finally taken the plunge. But yeah, I hope you enjoyed. Bye.